we are going to be talking about the magic ring. I know some of you have been finding the magic ring a little bit tricky, so we're going to look at that and also some alternatives to the magic ring, and we might pop in a couple of other little helpful hints as we go along. So you will need some yarn, your hook, some scissors, and as always a cup of tea or coffee. Now usually I have a nice pretty mug, and this is also a crochet how-to, just in case you're wondering. Now this is, I don't know if you can see it, this is a thermos mug, and this actually is fantastic when you're crocheting. I usually say don't let your tea get cold. I often use this, not a pretty mug, but I use this because it keeps your coffee or tea hot for ages and ages. So you can pop it on the side and you don't have to worry about it getting cold. It's fantastic. So there you go. If you want to keep your drink hot, get yourself a thermos mug. Okay, so today I said we're going to talk about the magic ring, which we are. Now let me just put my scissors aside. Now I'm going to bring in these squares that I had at the beginning, and if you look at these squares, you'll probably recognise some of these from the CAL, the 2018 Granny Square crochet along. Now this is our spiral, which I think was day 7. If you look at the middle of this spiral, it's really tight in there. There's not much of a gap there at all. Now, yeah, not much of a gap there at all. Nice and closed up neatly. And this one, I don't know what day this was, but this one again, you can see there's not much of a gap there either. This one wasn't part of the crochet along. This was just me having a bit of a play around and seeing what I could do. But this is where I started, like the granny square. And you can see here, again, it's nice and closed up. My traditional granny square, which was day 1, you can see here, there is like hardly a gap there. And this one, which was day 2 or 3, the closed in granny, and when we've done these stitches all the way along. Now as you can see here, I do have quite a circle in the middle, but I think that goes quite nicely with this X that we have going along, because we've got these open gaps along, and I think the middle circle goes quite nicely with that. And what I'm going to tell you is all of these squares were done with chaining and slip stitching. None of these squares were done using the magic circle. I know people often think the magic circle has to be used to get a tight centre. No, it doesn't have to be used to get a tight centre. None of these were the magic circle. I mean, obviously that's not tight anyway, but none of these were the magic circle. Now, I'm not saying I don't like the magic circle. It has its uses. Certainly, if you do toy making, if you do some of the I can never say the word. If you do the amigurumi, the small toys, or like, you know, Christmas baubles or anything. You might need that because you need it quite tight at the centre, like in the top of the head. You wouldn't want this kind of open hole at the top of like a little teddy's head or something. So there are uses for having a tight circle. So I'm going to show you the magic circle, but I'm also going to show you some other alternatives of how to do it and get it nice and tight in the centre. So grab your yarn, grab your hook, have a slurp of tea, and let's continue. So we have our yarn, and we have our hook, and we have our fingers. All 3 things we need for the magic circle. So you're going to take your tail. I've got your tail here, and then what you're going to do, now we're going to say this is for an average size circle, so for like a granny square. If you were doing a bigger item, you would need to use more fingers. You could use 2 fingers, 3 fingers or 4 fingers, but I'm just going to use 2 fingers today because we're just going to make a kind of average size circle. So what you want to do is take your tail and just drape it over your hand. Okay, just drape your tail over your hand and pop your thumb on top to secure that tail. Okay, and then at kind of an angle, you're going to take this working yarn and place it over your finger, and then we're using 2 fingers today, so underneath and over, and make an X. You can see there's kind of an X shape there. Keep hold of this tail here, so you're wrapping it over and making an X on here, and then you're bringing it over the back of your fingers and then catch it between your other finger. So you can either catch it there or you can pop it between these fingers here. It doesn't matter which you do, so either there or there. Okay, and this X on your fingers there. Okay, so that's what you've got going on. I'll show you that again. It might be easier to just watch the video right now and then watch what I do and then do it with me the second time. And don't forget, depending on what device you're using, either up in the top or just below, excuse me, there is a function there where you can slow the video right down, and obviously you can pause and rewind. So we're going to lay it over our hand, the tail, pop your thumb on top, wrap it over your fingers, bring it across in an X, over the back of your finger, so you've now got 2 strands, and then pop it between your other 2 fingers. Okay, so this working yarn is secured between these 2 fingers here, and then you've got your 2 strands here. Okay, and then what you're going to do is take your hook, and the actual hooky part you want facing upwards, and you're going to go under this top, under this first strand, and then for the back strand, we're going to call this the front strand, and this is the back. So under the front, and then over the back, and then turn your hook so this hook goes upside down. So you're catching this yarn now, the back yarn. Catch that yarn, pull it through and under the front yarn, and then twist. So if you can see here, there's a kind of tiny loop formed there. On your hook, there's a tiny loop formed. Okay, so you've twisted that, and then you might want to hold on to this loop, and then you're going to go under this yarn here, so under this yarn here. So find where you've got this natural sort of dip between your fingers, pop your hook under and through, catch that yarn, and then what you're going to do is pull that yarn through. You might need to grip the yarn with your fingers. Pull that yarn through that original loop, and that forms a slip stitch for your ring, and then you can let go, and there is your ring with your working yarn here and your ring here. Okay, now that might have looked mighty confusing, I know. The thing is, you have to practice, and I will be honest with you, even now I sometimes go to use the magic ring and I'm like, what am I doing? So that's how you make your magic ring. Now I'm going to undo this and we'll do it together, and we'll do it step by step, nice and slowly, but don't forget you can slow it down as well. So grab your yarn and your hook and we'll have a go. So I have undone my magic ring, and we're going to do this together now. So pop your tail over your fingers and pop your thumb on top. Hold on to this working yarn and across the top of your fingers, behind your fingers like so, and then wrap it over and across in an X shape. Okay, so tail, hold, wrap across in an X, turn your fingers, 2 strands, secure that strand between your fingers. Okay, we'll do that once more. Tail, thumb, wrap across in an X, over and secure between your fingers. Front strand, back strand. Okay, hook under the front, over the back, twist your hook and pull that strand under the front, twist your hook to make a loop. You can see that loop there. And then this strand here, you're going to pop your hook kind of sideways. You can see it's sideways. And then you're going to sweep it under there and twist, hook it through and through this loop here. You might need to give it a slight tug and through there. And then you can see just about here, this is your slip knot, okay? And then you can let that yarn down there, turn your ring, and there is your magic ring. Your working yarn and your magic ring. Okay, we're going to do that once more. I'll show you once more, and then I suggest you rewind the video and do it as many times as you need to. It doesn't matter if you rewind it and do it, you know, a dozen times. Just keep doing it until it becomes second nature. Okay, so your tail, or your yarn's tail, hold on to it with your thumb. Take your working yarn over your fingers, around, across in an X, over the back, and secure between your fingers. Once more, tail, thumb, over your fingers, wrap in an X, over the back of your fingers, and secure. Okay, there we go. Hook under the front, over the back, pull that yarn through and twist your hook to make a loop on your hook. Twist your hook sideways, go under this yarn, twist it back as a yarn over, pull through and then through this loop on your hook. Now I don't find that very easy, but you just put it through like so. Okay, and then take your fingers out. This is all secure here. It's not going to go anywhere, and then you can start to use your ring, and there's your working yarn. So if you need to, then rewind the video, have a practice of this as many times as you like, and then when you're ready, come back and I will show you how to use the magic ring, and I'll show that in just a second. So rewind if you need to, and if not, we'll be continuing in just a second. Okay, so you've got your magic ring, you've done your slip knot here from taking it over your fingers, and then this is how you work into it. Now if you're used to doing chains, you will find that so doing a ring of chains, you will find this is a lot floppier to work into, which is kind of why I don't favour it too much. But as I said earlier, I know it has its uses. So if we were doing, say, the granny square, we would chain 3 to start with. So you're going to need to hold on to your ring a lot more than you would hold on to, say, your ring of chains. Okay, so that's your chain 3, which counts as your first double crochet. So we're using US terms here. And then you would do 2 double crochet. So again, holding onto your ring. So I'm holding onto my ring and tail. And you would do your double crochet just as you would in any other ring. So you do your 2 double crochets. and then you would do your chain 2 for your corner, 3 double crochets. I'm just going to do this quickly so I can show you how it works to close up our magic ring. You can slow this down though if you want to. 1, 2, and oh, what am I doing? 1, 2, 3, and then you're going to do 2 chains, and you can see it's all a bit gappy here. Don't worry about that, it all sorts itself out in the end. So I'm going to do another 3 double crochet, 1, 2, and 3. So we've got 3, and now I need to do one more set of 3 double crochet. There we go, and our last chain 2. So if you look at this, it's all a bit spread out and all a bit weird and gappy. If you look at this does not look like the start of a granny square. But what you're going to do is take your tail, hold on to your work here, take your tail and give it a good pull. Pull that tight. Now, some of the yarn I've used in the past, when I pulled this tight, it's actually snapped. So I'm always a bit wary of pulling that in tight. But you do need to pull it as tight as you can. And then do your slip stitch into the top chain. This is not a granny square tutorial, so that's why I'm not going too slowly. So I apologise if you were trying to follow. Okay, so let me just pull that up. So pulling in my magic ring, you can see that there is not much. I don't know if you can see that on camera there, the focus. There's not much of a hole there. If I put it down here, you can see there's pull it a bit tighter. So there's not much of a gap there in the centre. And as you when you secure this, when you sew in your ends, you have to be a bit more careful with the magic ring, because if you just one bit of a pull, and you can see it all starts to come undone. Okay, so you do need to sew that in nice and securely. So pull that tight, and that pulls it right in. So when you do your sewing in, what you want to do, if possible, is do a kind of, you know, the knot that you do when you're sewing, and you kind of put it through, make a loop, and then you pull it through, just to secure that before you even start to weave it in to hide it. You do need to secure it well. But that's what your magic ring does. It gives you this nice tight closure here. So if you were doing something like a soft toy, you wouldn't see any of the filling through there. So that's how you do your magic ring. And if you were doing your single crochets, you would do you would work into the magic ring in exactly the same way as you would with your double crochets. So that's your magic ring. Now, if you, like I said, told you countless times, rewind the video if you need to re-watch how to do that magic ring. But that is how you do the magic ring that everyone goes on about. Now, I've told you I don't really favour the magic ring very much. I find it a little bit floppy to work into, and again, like I said, you have to secure it quite well, and I don't know why I'm a big fan of it. I know it has its place, but it's just not my kind of thing. But what we're going to do is I'm going to just fasten this off. So grab my scissors, I'm going to fasten this off because I'm going to show you a couple of other ways, and then we'll compare them afterwards to see which we think looks best. So that was our magic ring. Okay, that's our magic ring. There we go, magic ring. And the start of a granny square. Done. So the next way I'm going to show you is using some chains of how to do your centre ring. The first thing you need to do is your slip knot. Now you need to do your slip knot the way that I do it, so that because you need your tail to be the part that tightens your slip knot rather than your working yarn. Okay, so this is the way I do it. I take my tail and I wrap it over my fingers, and then I pop it behind, and then I just pull that loop through, okay, and then pop that on your hook. And then if you can see these two here, the tail tightens and the working yarn loosens it, so tail tightens. So you must, for this one, you need your tail to be the one that tightens this knot, or it doesn't work, okay. So do your slip knot like that, and then for the granny square, because we do a chain of 3 to count as our first double crochet, we need to do 4 chains, okay. So I'm going to do, I'll explain why 4. So 1 chain, which we will be using, and then 3 chains, which will count as our first double crochet, okay. And now what we're going to do is we're going to work, we're not going to make a ring like sometimes we go into here and we do a slip stitch and we make a ring of these chains. This time we're going to pop our hook straight in this first chain, and then, well, no, we're not going to, because we're going to do a double crochet. So yarn over, insert into that chain right by your slip knot, do your double crochet into that chain, and then if you look, you've got here your first chain of 3 and then your first double crochet, so that counts as 2 double crochet. And then into this same chain you're going to do your 3rd double crochet, and there is what we would have as our first, if I bring this other one in, this would be your first set of 3 double crochet, so your chain and your 2 double crochet, okay. And then as usual do your chain of 2, and then we're still working into this chain. So basically this chain is now our ring. This chain has taken the place of the magic ring or the chain 4 ring. So do your double crochets into here, just as you would if you were working into any other type of ring. So let's do these into here and then chain 2. So if I just do this first round of a granny square, and you'll see how it works. So let's 1, 2, 1, 2, and 3. How many have we got there? We've got our 4 clusters. Let's sort this knot out. Okay, so we've got our 4 clusters, and then your last chain 2, and then do your slip stitch in your top chain as you always would. And then I'm just going to fasten this off actually. Just pull that through, scissors, chop that off, pull it through, oops. And then if you see this middle ring, if I pop it down, you can see that centre, but then if I take the tail, hold on to the top here, pull it, you can see that's closed that right up. If you can see that on the camera there, pop it down here, you can see it's closed that right up. So if I bring this other one in, this was our magic circle, or magic ring. Magic circle sounds like I'm going to do some tricks, doesn't it? I don't know any magic. So this is our magic circle one, and this was our bottom chain. And I really like this way. You can pull that as long as you've got your tail, as long as your tail is the part of your slip knot that tightens it, then you can pull it right in and bring that circle in. Again, you need to fasten it off well on the back. You need to really secure that on the back so it doesn't pull over. So that was our double crochet, but now what if we're working into the ring and it asks for single crochets? How do we do that chain then? What we do is we chain 1, and that's where we work into, and then you do another chain. So we did 3 chains last time, which counted as our double crochet. But usually when you're working into a ring, For a single crochet, normally this first chain doesn't count, so we're not going to count that. That's just to help us get started. So you've been asked to do, say, 8 single crochets, so you're going to go into your first chain and you're going to do your 8 single crochets. That's 2, 3, I'll get back to you when I've done 8. Okay, so I've done 8 single crochet, and you can see from this strand here that it does kind of end up a bit like the magic circle, really. But then just pull that, hold on to your work and just pull on that tail to close that up. And now you would need to do your slip stitch. So because you've got your chain, it might be easier to count back. So we did this on a previous how-to video, but I'll just show you here. Count back, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So it's this one here. That is just your initial chain. Ignore that, and you're going to go into the stitch next to it. Okay, so you're going to go under there, and it might be a bit of a wiggle to get that through. It doesn't always like to go under straight away. Just give it a bit of a wiggle and encourage it nicely. Pull through and do your slip stitch, and there is your first 8 single crochet into that chain, and then just pull that chain down to close it a bit. There we go. And then when you come to sew your tail in, that will pull that even tighter. Okay, there you can see you've not got, if I pop this down here, you can see there's not much of a gap in that middle there. So that's how you can do it for a single crochet. And then you are probably wondering, okay, so what about the half double crochet? So I'm just going to go through the different stitches with you of how you can start that. Don't forget your tail needs to be your tail needs to be the part of your slip knot that tightens. Okay, so your tail is the one that tightens it. Okay, so if you're doing half double crochet, you would do 2 chains plus your starting chain. So your starting chain plus 2, and this would most likely count as your first stitch. But follow your pattern. If your pattern says do a magic ring or do 4 chains and slip stitch into the first one to make a ring, and then it says to do a half double crochet, to do 2 chains for a half double crochet, that would normally count as a half double crochet. It's pretty much only the single crochet that never counts because it doesn't really work too well as a chain. So you would do that, and then you'd work into this first one and do your half double crochets just as you normally would. So that would be your chain and 2 half double crochets, and they would count as 3 half double crochets. So 3, 4, 5, 6 half double crochets, strand there, 6 half double crochets, pull that tail tight and do your slip stitch into the top chain, and there you will have 6 half double crochets and a nice closed up ring. Okay, you can see that ring. I'll pop it on the white. There you go, nice and closed up. So it would be for doing it in this chain like I've done instead of the magic ring. It would be for a single crochet, you would do 1 extra chain and it wouldn't count as your first stitch. For a half double crochet, you would do 2 extra chains and it would count as your first stitch. And for a double crochet, you would do 3 chains and it would count as your first stitch. And as the stitches get bigger, you would just do more chains. So for a triple crochet, you would do 4 chains and that would count as your first stitch, and you would go on just like so. So there is your alternative to doing a magic ring, and I really like it. I find it easier, but your magic ring is here, and that's equally good in its own way. So I hope, guys, that you found that useful, and you will not find that magic ring as scary in the future, or you'll use my alternative method to the magic ring and find that just that little bit more easier to do. But as always, don't forget, there is your fallback method of slip knot, just in case you've not heard of this method, which if you are part of our Facebook group, you're bound to have heard it. Your usual method instead of a magic ring would be chain 4, go into your first chain and do a slip stitch, and then when you look in here, there is a ring in there, and you would do your 3 chains, and then you would work into this ring just as you would in any of the other rings that we've been doing today. So you have so many options, and you just have to choose the one that's best for you. And the thing with this one is you can put it up really tightly. If I show you these squares that I've done before, these were all done with either the chain 4, these ones, look, they're all done with either the chain 4 or the method of having that one chain at the bottom that we go into, and you can get quite a nice centre. But as I said as well, don't forget that sometimes we don't have to have the centre closed up. Sometimes you can get a nice feature from having a gap. So there we go, guys. I hope that's been helpful. If you found it useful, do give us a thumbs up, and if you haven't already, click that subscribe button to find out when we've got new videos for you. There'll be a new tutorial next Wednesday. Until then, guys, just keep hooking and don't let your tea get cold.